On June 2, 2007, 18-year-old Kelsey Smith, a recent Shawnee Mission West High School graduate, went to a Target store in Overland Park, Kansas. She was picking up a gift to celebrate 6 months with her boyfriend. Around 7 p.m., surveillance footage captured her walking into the store, selecting her items, and paying at the checkout. Sadly, this would be the last time she was seen alive. Kelsey's mother, Missy, later revealed she spoke to her daughter on the phone while Kelsey was still inside the store, and everything seemed normal. Kelsey planned to return home shortly, but when she didn't, her family grew worried. Known for quickly responding to calls and texts, Kelsey's sudden silence set off alarm bells. That night, her family reported her missing. Witnesses saw Kelsey in the parking lot around 7:07 p.m., but no one knew what happened next. For hours later, her car was found abandoned in a nearby Macy's parking lot. Inside, investigators found her wallet, purse, and the gift she had purchased, but her phone was missing. Suspecting an abduction, police reviewed surveillance footage from Target's parking lot. The video showed Kelsey walking toward her car when a figure suddenly ran toward her. Inside the store, investigators noticed a man who seemed to shadow Kelsey, following her through various aisles. He didn't speak to her, but kept glancing in her direction. This man left the store shortly after Kelsey, and the police released his image to the public. Though they didn't yet have proof of his involvement, they hoped someone would recognize him. Meanwhile, forensic investigators found an unfamiliar fingerprint on Kelsey's car seatbelt. After days of waiting, Kelsey's phone records finally revealed a ping near Longview Lake, about 20 miles from the store. A search of the area led to a heartbreaking discovery: Kelsey's body was found in a wooded area. She had been strangled with her own belt and assaulted. A tip soon came in identifying the man from the footage as 26-year-old Edwin Roy Hall. Investigators learned that Hall had followed Kelsey through the store, with plans to abduct her. He allegedly forced her into her car at gunpoint and drove her to Longview Lake, where he took her life. On June 6, Hall was arrested. Despite initially denying involvement, he couldn't explain away the fingerprint evidence. In July 2008, Hall pled guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping, avoiding the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Hall later apologized in court, though his remorse did little to ease the pain of Kelsey's family. His lawyer mentioned his difficult upbringing, but it wasn't enough to shift public opinion. Though Hall will never walk free again, the tragic loss of Kelsey Smith serves as a reminder of how quickly life can change, and how vital it is to seek justice for victims. Having a child go missing is one of the most heartbreaking experiences any parent can endure, especially if the case remains unsolved. But when a missing child is later found deceased, while it offers some closure, it does little to ease the pain. This was the reality for the family of 19-year-old Kenna Jenkins, who disappeared during a night out in September 2018. Although the case has been officially closed, her family still has many lingering questions. Kenna was known for her bright personality and beautiful smile. She was especially close to her mother, Teresa Martin, who had undergone surgery for breast cancer in 2017. On September 8, 2018, Kenna received exciting news: she had landed a job at a local nursing home. To celebrate, she made plans with 3 friends to go out that night. Kenna told her mother they'd be seeing a movie and going bowling. The last time Teresa saw Kenna was around 11 p.m. as she left the house. Borrowing her mom's car, Kenna didn't go to the cinema or bowling alley as she had said. Instead, she headed to the Crowne Plaza Hotel in Chicago, where her friends were waiting. CCTV footage shows the group entering the hotel around 1 a.m. That night was filled with dancing, drinking, and socializing, much of it captured on social media through Facebook and Snapchat. However, some videos showed that the women were receiving unwanted attention from several men. Despite telling them to back off, the men continued to flirt. Kenna's sister received a text from her around 1:30 a.m., the last communication anyone had from her. By 3 a.m., Kenna and her friends decided to leave the party. As they exited the room, Kenna realized she had forgotten her phone and car keys. Reports differ on what happened next. Some say Kenna waited in the hallway, while others claim she waited in the hotel lobby. When her friends returned, after about 20 minutes, Kenna was gone. Concerned, they searched the hotel but couldn't find her. They eventually called Teresa around 4 a.m., hoping Kenna had made her way home. When Teresa confirmed Kenna wasn't there, the friends picked her up and returned to the hotel to continue the search. Teresa was immediately suspicious of the friends' version of events. She believed they had been drinking and possibly using drugs. They admitted Kenna had a single drink, but Teresa knew even one drink could affect her daughter, who rarely consumed alcohol. Frustrated, Teresa asked hotel staff to review security footage, but they refused, saying she needed to file a missing person report first. At 7:15 a.m., Teresa called 911, but the dispatcher downplayed her concerns, suggesting Kenna was probably asleep in a room. The next day, the family filed a missing person report, and police began searching the hotel. The staff claimed to have reviewed the footage and found nothing. However, at 10 p.m., an officer decided to check the footage himself. He quickly found disturbing images of Kenna wandering the halls at 3:20 a.m., appearing disoriented and unsteady. The footage showed Kenna walking out of an elevator, stumbling down a hallway, and accidentally entering a men's bathroom. Eventually, she found herself in the hotel's kitchen, which was under renovation and off-limits. She disappeared from view as she headed toward a walk-in freezer. Around 1 a.m., officers found Kenna's body inside the freezer. She had succumbed to hypothermia after being trapped inside for about 20 hours. The freezer's temperatures were well below freezing, and she was found lying on the floor, missing one shoe. The medical examiner determined her death was accidental, caused by hypothermia. Kenna was intoxicated and had prescription drugs in her system. Despite the findings, Kenna's family, especially Teresa, believe there's more to the story. Many others agree, speculating about foul play. Some suggest her friends, or a hotel staff member, might have been involved, while others believe someone may have tampered with the security footage. Teresa later filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the hotel, arguing that if she had been allowed to see the footage earlier, Kenna's life might have been saved. The lawsuit was eventually settled, though the details remain private. The case of Kenna Jenkins continues to raise questions, leaving her family and many others searching for the truth. 36-year-old Amanda Dean went missing from her home in Collins, Ohio, on July 11, 2017. She left behind 4 sons and has not been heard from or seen since. According to Amanda's family, her boyfriend at the time of her disappearance, Fred Rear, was violent and abusive. Police were called to her home on Wells Road at least once in January of 2017 to respond to an altercation between Amanda and her boyfriend. According to the police report, Amanda first told the deputy that she hurt herself with a hammer when it fell and hit her in the eye. She eventually admitted that Fred had assaulted her, but said that she didn't want to file charges. Later, she told her sister that her boyfriend had given her a black eye and threatened to take her life. The situation was grim. An IM on Facebook that claims to show Amanda's comments from 2017 seems to confirm the desperation that she felt. In it, Amanda says she's living in Collins, Ohio, which she equates to hell. She tells another commenter that she doesn't have a place to stay if she leaves Collins, and concludes with, quote, "I'm stuck in hell till the devil kills me, I guess." Despite her tumultuous personal life, though, Amanda was a devoted mother to her sons. Joshua Dean, who's active in running a Facebook account for his mom's case, also called her a great person and an amazing friend. He also shared descriptions of the abuse that his mom faced at the hands of her boyfriend at the time, a man named Fred. Joshua wrote that the man would constantly abuse his mother and treat her worse than anything he's ever seen. At the time, he added that she was too young to do anything to help, but he was frustrated by what he believed to be ineffective treatment Amanda's case received from the local sheriff's office. In July of 2017, just a day after she was reported missing, the local county sheriff's office closed Amanda's case. They said that she'd been found at a safe house for survivors of violence and, for her own protection, the sheriff said that he could not divulge to her family where she was staying. Though they accepted this at the time, Amanda's family was worried that they hadn't heard from her themselves. Now, more than 5 years later, they're calling for her case to be reopened. According to Amanda's son Joshua, the sheriff's office has been tight-lipped about when and where they spoke to her. He said that they didn't even confirm face-to-face that she was safe and in the shelter. Her family is concerned about intel regarding Amanda's safety being falsified, or that she may have lied due to threats from her boyfriend. As of December of 2022, the family is publicly calling for the sheriff's office to provide proof of life of Amanda, either now or from 2017. Amanda's mother, Carolyn Tacker, submitted a request to the department for this information. In response, on December 21, 2022, the sheriff's office reported that they officially reopened an investigation into Amanda's whereabouts. According to a press release, quote, "Mrs. Dean entered into a safe house in 2017 and has not had contact with her family since. We've had conversations and a meeting with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations and requested that they review and continue the investigation. We've provided BCI with all of the information available for them to review. The Bureau of Criminal Investigations is said to be responsible for the next steps in the case, but as of February of 2023, there have been no formal updates." Frustrated with the lack of official response, Amanda's loved ones have been coordinating and gathering information in a Facebook group where they've shared information about the search and the lack of cooperation they perceive from the sheriff's office. Joshua has said in a comment that the sheriff is always, quote, "too busy to talk," despite repeated requests from the family. Group members have also shared information from local domestic violence shelters, which showed that their policies don't align with the sheriff's claims. In addition, they've posted police records for Amanda's search, which show how the department failed to follow its own policy in a missing person case. Amanda's case is a tragic and unsettling mystery and an example of how the failures of local law enforcement can impact lives. Anyone with information about her whereabouts is asked to contact 1-855 BCI in Ohio. The Facebook group dedicated to Amanda's case is public and open to all, and it's called Help Find Amanda Dean. In January 2015, a terrifying crime unfolded in Arlington, Texas, one that showcased the shocking audacity of some criminals, even in the presence of security cameras. The ordeal began around 1:45 a.m. on January 14, when 21-year-old Kristen Gala stopped at a Wells Fargo drive-thru ATM on North Collins Street after her late shift at work. Kristen, familiar with the ATM's typically well-lit surroundings, never saw the danger approaching until it was too late. As she completed her withdrawal, a man suddenly appeared beside her car. At first, she assumed he might be asking for help or money, but that assumption was quickly shattered when he drew a firearm. He demanded the cash she had just withdrawn and ordered her out of the vehicle. Following his instructions, Kristen opened the trunk and prepared herself for what was to come. Her efforts to remain observant during the encounter, noting his appearance and clothing, would later assist law enforcement. The man forced her to lie in the trunk and then shut it before driving off. Kristen's fear escalated with every passing moment as the vehicle moved through the night. Her kidnapper stopped at several locations, compelling her to withdraw additional money at gunpoint each time. After each stop, she was locked back into the trunk. Kristen later described how she feared for her life throughout the ordeal, believing it might end violently. Eventually, the man abandoned the car in Euless, leaving Kristen trapped in the trunk. Seizing the opportunity to escape, she managed to free herself and ran to a nearby convenience store, where she called 911. Speaking to dispatchers, Kristen recounted the terrifying sequence of events, her voice filled with relief to have survived. She reported that the kidnapping had started at the ATM and described the man in detail. While she escaped physically unharmed, the trauma lingered, making her hypervigilant and uneasy about using her car's trunk. The investigation quickly gained momentum. Police initially searched for Kristen's vehicle near her escape location, only to find it later abandoned back in Arlington. Surveillance footage from the ATM provided a breakthrough. The video clearly captured the suspect's face as he brazenly approached Kristen's car, showing little concern for the camera recording his actions. Wearing a gray sweatshirt, dark pants, white shoes, and a beanie, he calmly walked up to the car, brandished a firearm, and issued his commands. One detail of the footage stood out. After Kristen opened the trunk and stepped out of the car, the kidnapper briefly walked away, before returning to force her into the trunk. Observers noted this might have been an opportunity for Kristen to flee, but faced with a gun and fearing for her life, she complied. Strangely, while the man was careful to avoid leaving fingerprints, he made no effort to conceal his face, inadvertently providing investigators with a clear image. The footage was released to the public, generating crucial leads. Tips soon identified the suspect as 18-year-old Donald Moses. With assistance from the U.S. Marshals Service, Arlington police tracked Moses down and arrested him in February. Investigators also spoke to Moses's mother, who was incarcerated in Dallas County Jail. She confirmed her son's identity from the surveillance images. Moses faced serious charges, including aggravated robbery and kidnapping, both felony offenses. While the details of his sentencing remain unclear, these charges typically carry lengthy prison terms. The case serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly a routine moment can turn into a nightmare, and the pivotal role surveillance footage can play in bringing criminals to justice. In some true crime cases, investigators try to find a motive for the crime, but in many instances, there doesn't seem to be one. Sometimes, this is because the criminal targeted the wrong person by mistake, or it might just be a crime of opportunity that didn't intentionally target one specific person. In the strange case involving Elizabeth Barazza, a 29-year-old woman from Tumal, Texas, investigators are struggling to make sense of her murder, since she didn't seem to have any enemies and was well liked by her community. To make matters even more frustrating, Elizabeth's attacker was caught on CCTV security cameras on multiple occasions while carrying out the attack, but they've still not been identified. And since there were no other witnesses, there's no telling whether it will ever be solved. The incident occurred on the 25th of January, 2019, when Elizabeth was getting ready to start a garage sale at her house at around 7 a.m. This wasn't the first time that she'd held a garage sale at her house, since she did so every year. But this time, things would turn out very differently. Elizabeth's husband, Sergio, wasn't home at the time, since he left for work at around 6:48 a.m. He was working for a flooring company, where he was employed as a carpet installer. And just minutes after he left, his wife would lose her life. CCTV footage from the area shows a dark-colored pickup truck driving towards Elizabeth's home, and eventually, it's parked across the street, where the driver watched Elizabeth, with the truck's engine still running. In the next piece of footage that was obtained from the incident, the driver of the truck can be seen approaching Elizabeth while she's standing in her driveway. They're wearing a loose-fitting jacket or robe, and it isn't clear whether they're male or female. For a few seconds, the two seem to have a conversation, and it almost seems as though they know each other. But just a few moments later, the unthinkable happens. The attacker takes something out of their jacket, and as soon as Elizabeth sees the item, she immediately takes a step back, as if she's frightened of whatever it is. We then learn that the item is a firearm, as the attacker takes aim and fires, ending Elizabeth's life on her own driveway. They then turn around and run back to their truck, fleeing the area as quickly as they can. Strangely, the truck can be seen returning to the house a few minutes later, as if the attacker wanted to make sure that Elizabeth hadn't gotten up. This has led many people to believe that this was a contract killing. Unfortunately, the CCTV footage of the incident is rather grainy, since the camera was far away from Elizabeth's house, and it's impossible to identify the attacker. One of Elizabeth's neighbors, Candy Ellis, heard the firearm being discharged and immediately called 911. When the police arrived, they found that Elizabeth was still alive, and they very quickly arranged for her to be taken to Memorial Hermann Hospital, where doctors would do their best to save her life. But she passed away a few hours later. The crime would send shockwaves through the neighborhood, as no one could understand why Elizabeth would be targeted. She was a kind person who volunteered at the very same hospital where she passed away, and the fact that she was attacked in her own driveway made other residents in the area feel very uneasy, since there was no telling whether this was a random crime that could be repeated at any time. The Harris County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation into the attack, and they had a strong suspicion that Elizabeth knew her attacker. Hence, Sergio was interviewed first, followed by other residents that knew the couple. There was also a strong suspicion that the crime was carried out by more than one person. An investigator stated that they were certain that someone in the area had at least some knowledge of the perpetrator. The investigation was further hampered by the fact that no clues were left behind at the scene. There's also been speculation that Elizabeth's attacker handed her something before discharging their weapon, and many people believe this to be a note that's being kept from the public by investigators. When surveillance cameras in the area were checked, the vehicle was identified as possibly a Nissan Frontier Pro 4X. Some of Elizabeth's neighbors stated that this truck was driving around the neighborhood the previous night, and it's possible that the attacker was looking for the best spot from where to carry out their plan. Investigators believe that Elizabeth's killer is a woman, based on the attacker's size and gait as they approached her, but this has obviously not been confirmed and remains speculation for now. More CCTV footage would later be released, this time from Elizabeth and Sergio's own doorbell camera. And while the crime itself isn't captured, it did provide investigators with a small piece of audio in which Elizabeth can be heard greeting her attacker, saying, "Good morning." This has led many people to believe that she didn't actually know her attacker or that she didn't recognize them, spawning theories that the attacker was wearing some kind of disguise, probably a mask. At present, Elizabeth's case remains unsolved, and a $20,000 reward is being offered to anyone with information that leads to Elizabeth's attacker's arrest. If you have any information on this case, you're asked to get in touch with the Houston branch of Crime Stoppers. The last time that 25-year-old Ali Garcia was seen was on the 22nd of September, 2022, as she left her apartment in Salinas, California, to head out to work. To this day, her mysterious disappearance remains unsolved. Ali comes from a large family with 7 children, though she is particularly close to 2 of her sisters, Veronica and Elizabeth, both of whom are her elders. They describe her as always being positive and having the ability to make you smile, even if you're having a bad day. At the time of her disappearance, Ali was living with her mother, but both Veronica and Elizabeth saw her in the week prior to her going missing, with Elizabeth stating that she saw her on the 19th of September when she visited her mother's house to pick up a car seat. Veronica last spoke to the missing woman on the 22nd of September, after Ali texted her that morning at around 6 a.m. to wish her a good day, as they were in the habit of doing. She has not had any contact with her since. Ali was working at a My Chevrolet dealership in Salinas, where she was employed as a service advisor. But, on the morning of the 22nd of September, her manager contacted Elizabeth to ask if they knew where she was, as she'd not arrived for work at 7 a.m., as she usually did, which was very out of character. What is known is that Ali had headed to work that morning, as she was captured by surveillance cameras walking out of her mother's house at around 6:43 a.m. She can then be seen walking over to a red Honda Accord, unlocking the door, and getting in before driving away. It's assumed that she was driving to work since she had a shift scheduled, and she texted one of her sisters shortly after leaving the house to say that that's where she was headed. When no further contact could be made with Ali, her family became concerned for her safety, and they decided to open a missing person case with the Salinas Police Department. The first step in the investigation into her disappearance was to check her phone records and bank account, but neither was of any use, as they hadn't shown any activity since she mysteriously vanished. Desperate for answers, her sisters decided to use the Find My app in an attempt to track Ali's phone, and they were shocked to learn that it was last located in Big Sur, which is at least an hour away from her home. They couldn't think of any reason why she would have traveled there willingly. Her family also inspected her room to see if she may have left a note behind or if anything strange could be found, but everything was as it should be, and no further clues were found. They have grave concerns for her welfare, since she's almost constantly in touch with at least one of her family members to let them know where she is or where she's headed. Elizabeth and her husband decided to drive to Big Sur, where Ali's phone last pinged. Upon arriving there, they spotted her car, which had been left by the side of the road. They found the car to be locked, but when police officers arrived at the scene, they unlocked it. Inside, Ali's phone and other personal belongings, including her wallet and house keys, were discovered. A search was carried out in the surrounding area over the next 2 days by officers, who searched on foot and with the use of a drone and an airplane, but they were unable to find any indication of where she may be. The search was repeated again with search dogs, but this also failed to shed any light on the case. Investigators questioned as many as 62 people in the hopes that someone may have seen Ali or knew where she was headed, but this also failed to provide any clues. Despite the strange series of events in Ali's case, authorities have stated that they don't believe she met with foul play. A $10,000 reward for information is being offered to anyone who comes forward with information leading to her current whereabouts. Ali is described as being 5 feet 6 inches tall, with brown hair and brown eyes. She weighs between 130 and 170 pounds and can be identified by her cleft chin and the dermal piercings that are located on her chest. The last time she was seen, Ali was wearing black leggings and a black hooded top. If you or anyone you know has information on Ali's case, you're asked to contact the Salinas Police Department at 831-758-7393, quoting the agency case number 220900801. In many missing person cases, investigators state they do not suspect any foul play, since it is likely the person simply decided to leave on their own, for whatever personal reason they had. But this is not always the case, as is evidenced by the disappearance of Fiona Holm, a 48-year-old woman from London, England. In Fiona's case, investigators believe foul play is involved, and a suspect has been taken into custody as they believe he is responsible. When Fiona was reported missing on the 29th of June, 2023, surveillance cameras in the area where she was last seen were checked, and they found footage of her as she shopped at a liquor store. In this footage, she can be seen wearing a dark jacket, a brown top, and light-colored pants. She also has her hair tied up on top of her head. Nothing seems unusual in the CCTV image that was released to the public, and it would seem that at this point, she wasn't in any danger. They found further surveillance footage showing Fiona walking alone along Verdant Lane, which is located in Catford, East London. But in this instance, she can be seen wearing a green top, with dark pants or leggings, and shoes that could possibly be Converse. Investigators are looking to create a timeline of Fiona's movements that night, as they believe she's no longer alive, and they want to bring closure to her family by locating her remains. Fiona's family has appealed to anyone with information on where she was headed, or where her current whereabouts are, to come forward, as they're unable to grieve properly until they know what happened to her, and where she eventually ended up. Investigators revealed that a 63-year-old construction worker named Carl Cooper has been taken into custody in connection with her disappearance, and hence, they're unable to reveal any specific information on the case. They have, however, added that they continue their search for Fiona to bring some closure to her family. Cooper has also been linked to another case, that of his 41-year-old girlfriend Naomi Hunt, who was found deceased in Congleton Grove, in Plumstead, on the 14th of February, in 2022. It's believed that he was responsible for her passing. The man is thought to have been in a relationship with Fiona at the time of her disappearance, and although he is still under investigation in Hunt's case, he was released on bail. It's during this time that he's thought to have ended Fiona's life. The missing woman's bank records were checked but showed no sign of activity since her disappearance, and investigators have stated that they believe she lost her life up to 9 days before she was reported missing. The prosecutor, Joel Smith, has stated that Fiona was reported missing when it was noticed that the food in her fridge, as well as her laundry in her washing machine, had started to turn moldy. Her family then decided to visit Cooper's house, and there, they saw a parked van outside, with several of Fiona's clothing items inside. They questioned the driver of the van, who stated that he had bought the clothes from Cooper, and they decided to inform the police. Cooper was arrested, but he claimed that the clothing wasn't Fiona's, and that it belonged to someone else in the building. Initially, investigators treated Fiona's disappearance as a missing person case. But when she remained missing for an extended period of time, and failed to make contact with her family, the Metropolitan Specialist Crime Command was asked to assist in the investigation. Since Fiona was well known in the Lewisham and Blackheath areas, her family and the investigating officers have asked anyone in those areas to come forward if they saw her during the time period that she went missing, around the 20th of June, as even the smallest lead could reveal her whereabouts. She was known as a friendly person who would always take time out of her day to have a conversation with people in the surrounding community. If you have any information on Fiona's case, or know where she can be found, you're urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 0800 555 111. The mysterious disappearance of Trey Olsen began on February 17, 2022. At 1 a.m., she was last seen at a Newton petrol station in her silver Mazda hatchback. After pulling up to the pump, Trey got out of her car and was approached by an unidentified man. This man had been involved in a minor traffic accident with Trey shortly before they both arrived at the station. The two engaged in a brief argument, after which the man walked away. Trey continued to fill her car with petrol and then paid at the window. The attendant seemed to relay some unexpected information to her, which led Trey to walk across the parking lot to a red car that appeared to be empty. She looked inside the vehicle, then returned to her car and drove away. That night marked the last time Trey was seen. The details of her disappearance remain unclear. Her family has stated that they know no reason for Trey to have been in the Newton area. On February 28th, police issued a public appeal for information, confirming that Trey's family had not heard from her since the night she vanished. 2 days after this appeal, Trey's vehicle was found abandoned on a rugged road, about 20 minutes away from the petrol station. The road was only suitable for four-wheel drive vehicles. A search of the area uncovered some of Trey's belongings, including toiletries, but there was no sign of Trey herself. The police have urged anyone who was in the area around the time of Trey's disappearance to contact authorities via police link at 131 444. They have also requested the owner of a red ute, seen with its bonnet up on nearby Green Gully Road around the time Trey vanished, to come forward. Trey is described as 165 centimeters tall, with a slight build, black hair and brown eyes. Her sudden and mysterious disappearance has left her family and the community searching for answers. In 2019, 18-year-old Theo Hayez, a young Belgian, was drawn to Byron Bay, Australia, just like many travelers his age. Known for its stunning beaches, great surfing spots, and laid-back atmosphere, Byron Bay is a magnet for backpackers and tourists, making it a vibrant, transient town. But for Theo, this trip would turn into a mystery from which he would never return. Theo had been exploring Australia for nearly a year by the time he arrived in Byron Bay. He had spent much of his time down under with his cousin, Lisa Hayez, who described him as a responsible and level-headed traveler. Theo wasn't the typical party-loving tourist. He was more interested in experiencing Australian culture and the country's natural beauty. When he arrived in Byron Bay, Theo stayed at the Wake Up Hostel and soon made friends with other young travelers. On May 31st, Theo and one of his new acquaintances took a shuttle bus into town. CCTV footage captured them at 7:45 p.m. buying a bottle of wine, which they later shared with friends back at the hostel. Later that evening, they decided to visit a notorious bar called Cheeky Monkeys, known for its rough crowd and aggressive bouncers. Despite its reputation, Theo seemed to be enjoying himself, dancing with the other backpackers he had met. At around 11 p.m., Theo bought 2 drinks at the bar, but was soon escorted out by security. The guard claimed Theo was stumbling and had too much to drink, but other witnesses said Theo was sober and behaving politely. CCTV footage showed Theo looking confused but compliant as he was led out and had his photo taken by the guard. At 11:07 p.m., security cameras captured Theo walking alone down Kingsley Street into the cold, quiet night. This was the last time anyone saw Theo Hayez alive. Everyone assumed he was heading back to his hostel, but his Google location data told a different story. Instead of heading towards the hostel, Theo walked in the opposite direction. After leaving the bar, Theo sent several text messages in French to friends back in Belgium. He even watched part of a TV show on YouTube and messaged his sister on WhatsApp. He frequently checked Google Maps, looking for routes back to his hostel, but strangely, he ended up walking towards a youth activity center and then stood in a sporting field for 7 minutes. This field was known as a hangout for homeless people and drifters. At 11:30 p.m., Theo began walking quickly through the Milne track towards Tallow Beach, moving at a fast pace despite the darkness and thick bushland. He never slowed down, navigating the treacherous terrain with surprising speed. Eventually, he reached the beach and headed towards Byron Bay's lighthouse. During all this time, Theo continued texting his friends and sister, and his messages showed no sign of distress. At 12:56 a.m., Theo sent his final message to a friend. 6 minutes later, his phone went into sleep mode and stopped transmitting data. Strangely, his phone reconnected at 6 a.m. and again at 1:47 p.m., but after that, it was never heard from again. In the following days, Theo's family grew increasingly worried when he didn't call, which was unlike him. On June 6th, they reported him missing, sparking a massive search effort. Helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, trackers, divers, and even rock climbers scoured the area. The local community joined in, putting up missing person posters and helping in the search. Theo's parents flew to Australia, pleading for any information that could lead to their son. Despite the extensive search, no trace of Theo was found, except for his baseball cap, which was discovered near Tallow Beach in July. So what happened to Theo Hayez? 3 main theories emerged. Misadventure. Theo might have decided to explore the bushland, reach the beach, and then climb the cliffs towards the lighthouse, only to tragically fall into the sea. But if he fell into the ocean, why did his phone reconnect later? Foul play. Some believe Theo met someone who led him through the bush and harmed him. This could explain the strange route he took and why he seemed comfortable texting his friends. Navigation error. Theo might have followed faulty Google Maps directions, got lost in the bush, and succumbed to the cold. But why didn't he call for help or mention being lost in his messages? Other theories suggest he might have been given bad directions, unknowingly taken a substance, or had his phone stolen. Despite these theories, Theo's fate remains a mystery. His family still hopes for answers, and a $500,000 reward is offered for any information that could solve the case of Theo Hayez. Keeshae Jacobs was born on January 1, 1995. From the Westover neighborhood of Richmond, Virginia, she lived with her mother, Tony, and her older brother, Devon. Tony held various customer service jobs to support her family, earning enough to maintain a stable and comfortable living situation. She ensured there was room for fun too, often taking Devon and Keeshae to their favorite amusement park, King's Dominion, in Doswell, Virginia. Tony also valued family connections, so she frequently visited relatives on the coast with her children. Despite their age difference, Keeshae and Devon were very close. Everyone was surprised by how well they got along, as their bond was stronger than most brother and sister relationships. In elementary and middle school, Keeshae was a cheerleader, and her mom was the coach. She made close friends through cheerleading and school and was very loyal to them, sometimes too much. Even though she was tough, Keeshae had a sensitive side and always made sure her friends were happy. Eventually, after graduating from high school, Keeshae decided to stay in Richmond with her family until she figured out her plans. Over the next few years, she worked various jobs to gain experience and find her path. Tony admired how well her daughter managed her money, showing more responsibility than most 21-year-olds. Even though Keeshae was popular, she didn't enjoy partying or staying out late. She would join in occasionally if invited, but she preferred other ways of socializing. The future looked bright, but no one knew the terrible events that awaited Keeshae, Devon, and Tony. The family was so happy that it was hard to believe that everything would fall apart in a few years. On the evening of September 26, 2016, Keeshae sent a text to her mother, informing her that she would be staying overnight with a friend and would reach out the next morning. Since Keeshae was 21 years old, her mother, Tony, chose not to inquire further about who the friend was, respecting her daughter's privacy. However, on September 27th, while working as a dispatcher, Tony was expecting a call from her daughter to confirm she had returned home safely. Typically, Keeshae would call during Tony's lunch break between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. However, this time, no call came. Concerned, Tony tried calling Keeshae's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She then called Devon, who mentioned that he had last spoken to his sister the previous night. When Tony got home that evening, she realized Keeshae was still missing. Worried, she contacted Keeshae's friends and visited their homes, but there was no sign of her. At around 2 a.m. on September 28th, after discussing it with her sister, Tony called the Richmond Police Department to report Keeshae missing, explaining that it was unlike her daughter to disappear without informing anyone. The search for Keeshae began with her friends and Tony going door-to-door in the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen her. During this search, Tony learned that her daughter's friends had been with Keeshae the night she vanished, despite earlier denials. When questioned, they admitted to dropping her off in Church Hill, about 10 minutes from her home, to meet someone, though they didn't know who it was. A specific friend revealed that he had driven Keeshae to an unknown man's house, believing she would meet a mutual female friend there. He later claimed this was confirmed by a text from that friend. After speaking with him, Tony went to the man's house. A man at the house, who introduced himself as Otis, gave several accounts of the night of September 26th, admitting he knew Keeshae and saw her that night, but claimed she left shortly after arriving. Tony then called the police, who searched the house but found no signs of Keeshae. During her investigation, Tony discovered a woman who claimed that Otis had beaten her, held her captive and forced her into sexual acts. Tony fears her daughter might have faced a similar situation and suspects she could be a victim of sex trafficking. However, after finding Keeshae's last known location, investigators searched the Church Hill area multiple times. They canvassed the neighborhood and handed out flyers. Keeshae's phone records showed her phone had been off since the night she went missing. Her bank account was untouched, and her email and Facebook were inactive. Investigators have not found her phone ID or the overnight bag she had with her. To encourage new leads, her family and friends raised $3,000 for a reward leading to an arrest and conviction. There have been many reported sightings of Keeshae, but none have been verified. Investigators do not believe she ran away or moved to another state. Over the years, Richmond police have been mostly silent, except for a 2017 announcement stating they believed Keeshae was a victim of foul play. However, a few months after Keeshae disappeared, Tony's only other child, her son Devon, was fatally shot at a Motel 6 in Richmond during a struggle. His killer was convicted and is serving time behind bars. Tony said, "I haven't fully mourned my son's death because I'm still fighting for Keeshae," she said. "Knowing she's still out there keeps me going. As a mother, I have to fight for my daughter because no one else will fight for her like I do." However, the man suspected in Keeshae Jacobs' 2016 disappearance in Richmond has pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in a Florida woman's death. Otis Tucker, 35, was facing the death penalty for the November 2022 murder of Ashley Fowler, a mother of 3 from Jacksonville. Tucker's plea deal included a conviction for tampering with evidence and could send him to prison for the rest of his life. The Richmond woman was 21 years old when she was last seen at a home in Church Hill where Tucker lived in September 2016. Investigators said they collected evidence of foul play from that home and questioned Tucker about Jacobs, but never charged in connection to her disappearance. Tony credits the Richmond Police Department and the local community for supporting her through Keeshae's disappearance and Devon's murder. She often visits Maury Street Cemetery, where her son is buried. On the anniversary of Keeshae's disappearance, her family releases blue balloons in her memory. They have also held rallies, including one near the house where she was last seen. Since her daughter's disappearance, Tony has become an advocate for families with missing loved ones. She has partnered with the Richmond Police Department and Mayor LeVar Stoney to observe Missing Persons Day every April. Keeshae Jacobs went missing from the 3100 block of East Broad Street in Richmond, Virginia on September 26, 2016. She was 21 years old, last seen wearing pink and black Nike basketball sneakers, a pink headscarf, and black basketball shorts. She might also have been wearing a silver Pandora bracelet with a Vegas charm. At the time, she was between 5'0" and 5'3" tall and weighed around 100 to 110 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. Her tattoos include a rose on her shoulder, paw prints on her right thigh, a flower on her right wrist, Tony beneath a heart on her left shoulder, and a leaf on her right foot. Her ears were pierced, and her fingernails were painted blue. Tony Jacobs has worked tirelessly to keep her daughter's memory alive and to ensure that her story is not forgotten. However, anyone with information about Keeshae's disappearance is urged to call the Richmond Police Department's Major Crimes Unit at 804-646-0729.